There is one strange law of the human mind that very few people want to look at honestly. The more we repress something, the more powerful it becomes. The more we condemn it, the more hypnotic it becomes. The more we call it sinful, dirty, dangerous, forbidden, or immoral, the more the mind begins to circle around it in secret. And this, perhaps, is why so many people are not free, not because they desire too much, but because they have been taught to be ashamed of what they desire. Hello, and welcome to the OSHO School of Life. I am Alice, and in today's episode, I want to take you into one of OSHO's most provocative and uncomfortable teachings: the connection between repression, desire, shame, morality, sexuality, pornography, religion, and freedom. This is not really an episode about sex. It is an episode about the human mind. It is about what happens when natural energy is condemned instead of understood. It is about why societies that publicly preach purity often become privately obsessed with what they claim to reject. And it is about one of Osho's most dangerous insights: repression does not destroy desire. It gives desire more power. Osho was often attacked for speaking openly about sexuality. He was accused of being dangerous, immoral, excessive, scandalous. But when I read him carefully, I do not hear a man simply defending indulgence. I hear a man asking for awareness. He is not saying that unconscious desire is freedom. He is saying that unconscious repression is bondage. He is pointing to something much deeper, that human beings have been split into pieces. One part of us is told to be spiritual. Another part is told to be moral. Another part is told to be respectable. Another part is told to hide. Another part is told to feel ashamed. And when these parts cannot meet, when the conscious and the unconscious remain divided, the human being becomes fragmented. Outwardly, a person may appear civilized. They may behave correctly, speak politely, follow social codes, and perform a respectable version of themselves. But inwardly, they may be full of suppressed longing, guilt, anger, fantasy, fear, and confusion. This is why Osho says that people fall in pieces, not because they are naturally broken, but because they have been taught to reject parts of themselves. And once a part of you is rejected, it does not disappear. It goes underground. It becomes unconscious. It becomes distorted. And from there, from the darkness, it begins to control you. This is the great paradox of repression. Whatever you repress becomes valuable. If you tell the mind, "Do not think of this," the mind begins to think of it. If you tell the body, "This is forbidden," the body becomes fascinated by it. If you tell a whole society, "This is sinful," the society may publicly condemn it while secretly consuming it. The mind is not attracted only to the thing itself. The mind is attracted to the tension around the thing, the secrecy, the shame, the prohibition, the feeling of crossing a line. This is why repression does not make people innocent. It makes people obsessed. And Osho saw this with brutal clarity. He argued that the priest and the pornographer are not enemies in the way we usually imagine. They are part of the same psychological economy. One condemns desire, the other sells desire. One creates guilt, the other profits from the guilt. One says, "This is forbidden," the other whispers, "Come and look." And the more something is forbidden, the more market value it gains. This is a shocking idea, but if we look honestly, it is everywhere. A culture that condemns the body becomes obsessed with the body. A culture that condemns sexuality becomes secretly fascinated by sexuality. A person who spends their life fighting desire may find that desire becomes the very center of their inner world. This is why, for Osho, the problem is not desire itself. The problem is unconsciousness. The problem is not the existence of human energy. The problem is that human energy is shamed, denied, commercialized, moralized, and pushed into the unconscious until it becomes compulsive. Osho's point is radical. If sexuality were accepted naturally, without shame, hysteria, guilt, or moral panic, much of its psychological charge would disappear. Not because sex is bad, and not because desire is wrong, but because once something is accepted, it no longer needs to dominate the imagination. What is understood loses its fever. What is expressed loses its violence. What is brought into awareness loses its compulsive power. There is one line from this teaching that, to me, contains the whole revolution. Repress anything and it becomes valuable. Do not repress it and it loses all value. Express it and it evaporates. This is one of the deepest spiritual teachings hidden inside one of the most controversial subjects, and it does not apply only to sexuality. It applies to the whole human being. Repress anger, and it becomes resentment. Repress grief, and it becomes depression. Repress fear, and it becomes anxiety. Repress desire, and it becomes obsession. Repress your truth, and it becomes a wound. The problem is not that human beings feel too much. The problem is that human beings are taught to feel one thing and perform another. They are taught to smile while they are angry, to be pure while they are burning, to be obedient while they are rebellious, to be spiritual while they are full of unexamined instinct, to be respectable while they are secretly starving for life. And so they become divided. They become socially acceptable, but internally chaotic. They know how to behave, but they do not know how to be whole. For Osho, spirituality was not about cutting the human being into acceptable and unacceptable parts. It was not about pretending to be above the body. It was not about declaring war on desire. It was about bringing consciousness to everything, to the body, to longing, to fear, to sexuality, to love, to jealousy, to shame, to loneliness, to pleasure, to the unconscious. Because awareness is not repression, awareness is light, and whatever is brought into the light begins to change. This is why Osho was so threatening to moral systems. He was not simply breaking rules, he was exposing the machinery behind the rules. He was showing that many forms of morality do not free people, they control people. They create fear, then sell salvation. They create shame, then offer forgiveness. They create guilt, then claim authority over the guilty. And the same is true in reverse with commercial exploitation. The pornographic imagination feeds on what society has made forbidden. It depends on repression. It depends on secrecy. It depends on the mind being hungry, guilty, and divided. So both sides need the same wound. The moralist needs repression. The exploiter needs repression. But the free human being does not. A free human being does not need to be obsessed. A free human being does not need to hide. A free human being does not need to turn natural energy into secret drama. This is why Osho's message is not indulge blindly. His message is become conscious. And there is a profound difference. Indulgence is unconscious. Repression is unconscious. Awareness is the third way. The repressed person says, I must not feel this. The indulgent person says, I must immediately act on this. But the conscious person says, let me look at this. Let me understand this. Let me see what this energy really is. And the moment you begin to observe your energy without condemnation, something changes. The grip loosens, the fever cools, the obsession softens. You are no longer possessed by what you are willing to see. This is also why Osho says that when certain energies begin to disappear, people often panic. They think, if this desire goes, what will be left? If this excitement disappears, what will remain of my life? If this obsession fades, will I become empty? But Osho says no. When lower compulsions dissolve, Energy does not vanish, it becomes available for something higher, a higher joy, a higher creativity, a higher ecstasy, a deeper intimacy with life. This point is essential. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is not to become lifeless. The goal is not to kill desire. The goal is to transform energy. When human energy is unconscious, it becomes compulsion. When human energy is repressed, it becomes obsession. When human energy is exploited, it becomes addiction. But when human energy becomes conscious, it can become creativity, tenderness, meditation, love, presence, and freedom. That is the real revolution. Not repression, not indulgence, but transformation. And perhaps this is why Osho remains so disturbing. He does not allow us to hide behind easy answers. He does not let the moralist feel superior. He does not let the rebel feel free simply because they break rules. He does not let society pretend that shame is virtue. And he does not let the individual pretend that unconscious desire is liberation. He asks for something far more difficult. He asks for honesty. He asks us to see what is actually happening inside us, not what we should feel, not what we are supposed to feel, not what religion, culture, family, respectability, or society told us to feel, but what is actually there, because only what is seen can be transformed. And perhaps this is where the deepest healing begins, not when we condemn ourselves, not when we perform purity, not when we pretend to be more spiritual than we are, but when we can finally say, this too is part of me, this fear, this desire, this shame, this longing, this hunger, this contradiction, this hidden part I have been running away from. And the moment we can look at it without hatred, it begins to lose its power, because the unconscious survives in darkness, shame survives in secrecy, obsession survives in repression, but awareness changes everything. This is why the real question is not, how do I destroy desire? The real question is, how do I bring consciousness to desire? How do I stop being ruled by what I refuse to understand? How do I stop turning natural energy into guilt? How do I stop splitting myself into pieces? How do I become whole? That, to me, is the deeper invitation of this teaching, to stop living as a divided being, to stop fighting the body, to stop worshiping shame, to stop confusing repression with spirituality, to stop allowing society to turn our natural energies into markets, sins, scandals, and secrets. Because the freer you become inside, the less you can be manipulated from outside. If you are not ashamed, guilt cannot control you. If you are not repressed, fantasy cannot possess you. If you are not divided, society cannot so easily sell you back the pieces of yourself. And this is why awareness is dangerous. A conscious human being is not easy to control. A conscious human being does not need the priest to condemn them or the market to excite them. A conscious human being begins to belong to themselves. And perhaps that is what Osho wanted more than anything. Not a society of people who are obedient, ashamed, frightened, and fragmented, but human beings who are whole enough to look at themselves without fear. Because once you can look at yourself without fear, transformation begins naturally. You do not need to force it. You do not need to punish yourself. You do not need to become someone else. You only need to bring light to the places where you were taught to hide, and slowly, what was obsessive becomes ordinary. What was forbidden loses its fever. What was shameful becomes understood. What was unconscious becomes energy. And what was once a prison becomes a doorway. This is the real shock in Osho's teaching. The things we repress do not disappear. They wait, they grow, they become more valuable, more charged, more dangerous. But the things we bring into awareness begin to dissolve, not through violence, guilt, or control, but through understanding. So perhaps the most radical spiritual act is not to fight yourself. It is to see yourself fully, honestly, and without shame. Because repression creates obsession, awareness creates freedom. This is Alice. Thank you for listening to the OSHO School of Life. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a review. Have a beautiful rest of the day.